Hello, welcome and welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Esther and today I'll be showing you how to make this layered girl's dress. For a 4 to 5 year old, I use 2 yards of my desired fabric, a lining just for the bodice. You can line the whole dress, and I use a button in place of a zipper. You can use zipper, it's your choice. To dress my bodice, I have 2 pieces here for my back piece, and the front is going to be cut on fold. So to start my drafting, I'm marking a button allowance first, and this is done on the back piece. So now I'm going to place my front piece under zipper allowance point, and then I'm going to go ahead and mark a guideline at the top, which will also serve as a shoulder line. From that guideline, I'm measuring my bodice length. And then on the guideline on top, I'm marking half my shoulder width measurement plus seaming allowance. And then I go ahead and mark the shoulder slope. And then my desired neck width. Then the back neck depth and the front neck depth. With that, I'm going to connect all the mark points so far. From that shoulder slope, I'm placing my armhole depth. I'm going to connect my shoulder slope and the armhole line. Just directly below the armhole line, I'm going to mark quarter of the round chest measurement plus ease and seaming allowance. And then on the bodice length, I'm marking quarter of the waist measurement plus ease and seaming allowance. Mine is the same as the chest measurement. At the side here, I'm going to go up by 1 inch. And I'm going to connect with a curved line. So just blend it to the down part of that bodice. To connect the armhole, if you don't have a curved ruler, just mark 1 inch here and follow suit and connect. This will be for the back. But for the front, I'm going to note the center point and I'll be going in by about half an inch. At this point, I'm just going to cut out my bodice. I'm cutting the back piece first. Then I will cut the front piece. I'm going to use the lining as a template to cut my fashion fabric. So basically just pin it in place and you cut. Now just a quick one here for the skirt. So the length of my dress is 28 inches and I choose that my bodice is 11 inches. Meaning that my skirt length will be 17 inches. This is without seaming allowance. I decide to divide my skirt length by the numbers of tiers I want. So I want 3 tiers, so 17 divided by 3, I have about 5.7. I want the last tier not to be attached to my A-line skirt. So that leaves me at 11 inches for my A-line skirt, while the last tier will not be included. So let's go ahead and cut the skirt piece for. Now it's time to cut the A-line skirt. So the length for the A-line skirt is 11 inches, but because of seaming allowance, we are having 12 inches. So I'm just placing it on fold and I'll be using the front bodice to mark it. So from this point, the down part will be about 3 inches wider. You can decide to cut the skirt parts, the front and the back separate if you're adding zipper to your dress. So by the side, I'm going up by 1.5 inches and I'm going to curve the hem of my skirt. This way I'm going to be having a nice finish instead of a droopy side skirt. At this point, I'm just going to cut out my skirt, but I would encourage you to cut the back and front skirt separately so that you can include your zipper allowance. So right here I have 2 pieces for the skirt. Right here are all the pieces we need to assemble to make this dress. You can choose to add linings to your skirt, but I will still show you how to neatly finish this dress without a skirt lining. So let's start with the bodice. For my front bodice, I have my fashion fabric and lining piece cut on fold, and I also have 2 pieces for the back. So I'm just going to go ahead and place them right side facing, and I'll be joining them at the shoulder. After joining the bodice at the shoulder, I'm just going to go ahead and add a fusible interface to the center back to make it more stable. Now I'm going to place my fashion fabric and my lining right side facing each other. I'm going to go ahead and stitch the necklines, the armholes, and I'm going to also stitch the center back. After stitching, I'm just going to notch the corner of this neckline since it's a square neckline. After notching the neckline, I'm just going to notch the armhole, then turn my bodice right side out. At this point, I'm going to go in and understitch that and give it a good press. So after understitching and giving it a press, I'm placing it right side facing, fashion fabric to fashion fabric and lining to lining, and I'm stitching it using my allocated seaming allowance. So at this point, we are going to move to the skirt piece. So I'm going to start by making a placket for the center back of my skirt. To do that, I'm just folding my skirt piece in half, and I'm going to go ahead and note the center of the skirt piece. That center, I'm just going to mark 3 inches downward, and I'm going to draw a line at that point. Then I'm going to use my scissors and I'm going to cut open to that 3 inches point. So this is the fabric I'll be using to stitch my placket. You want to make sure that it's double that 3 inches. Mine, I use 7 inches in length, so you want to make sure that you have about 7 inches. You can trim off the excess, just have a bit more than 6 inches. So I'm just going to pin and make sure that cut point is opened and it's as straight as possible, and I'm seaming it with 1/4 inch seaming allowance. So after seaming it with 1/4 inch seaming allowance, I'm going to go ahead and iron the seaming allowance towards the placket area. You want that to lie quite flat. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold this and fold it again. So you want to stitch the fold over and make sure that the fold over cover the initial seam. So with that, the placket is pretty much ready. You can decide which side you want it to overlap. Do you want the button to be at the right or at the left side? So depending on your choice, go ahead and give that a good press, after which you are going to stitch the back part. So just a slant stitch is what you're going to do right there, just to have it lying nicely in place. And then you trim off the excess. So it's always good to have more than you need. So now that my placket piece is ready, so like I said, my skirt piece here is 12 inches, actually 11 inches, but the other is for seaming allowance, the extra 1 inch, 1/2 inch at the top and 1/2 inch at the bottom. So you want to locate the midpoint of this your skirt piece, and you're going to place the tape and measure whatever you have. So if you measure it and you multiply it by 2 or 3, depending on the amount of gathers you want, that is the width of your fabric, and you're going to have different width for each layer. So the top layer is going to be less, then the height of this, should I say the length of this layer, depends on the length that you have. So make sure you add at least 1.5 inches to 2 inches to your length. Mine, the length right here that I have is 7 inches, and my initial length was about 5 point something. Do well to add about 1.5 to 2 inches so that your layers will be able to overlap, taking into consideration that you are going to be hemming yours. So on the screen is the breakdown of each of my tiers. I'm going to take to my sewing machine now and I'm going to gather it. So you're going to join both the back and the front layer and you're going to gather it. So this is it after I've gathered it. Now to the skirt piece. Remember that we finished the center back placket, but in case you're not using placket, do well to stitch that center back, leaving an opening for your zipper. Then join the side of your skirt. After I've joined the side of my skirt, please note that I only join one side of my skirt. I'm going to go ahead and stitch my layers on. I'm starting with the last ruffle. So I'm going to leave a seaming allowance by the side. I'm not going to start directly to stitch. So I'm just going to start about half an inch away, depending on what your seaming allowance is. Go ahead and stitch using your located seaming allowance. Stitch this ruffle down. So it's best to pin it in place first. If you pin it in place, it's much easier to stitch it and it will be even. So you can also stitch on top to make sure it lies flat, but I didn't have to. Next is to stitch the second ruffle or the second layer. This is how I stitch mine. Don't worry, by the time you're done stitching, it will fall back and the raw edge will be concealed. So right here, the two layers have been stitched on successfully. So it's time to join the skirt by the side. Remember that I said you should leave a little bit of gap, don't start directly. So now you're going to join the side of the skirt and you're going to complete stitching the ruffles too on. That way you're going to have a neat finishing. So when you're done stitching the side, go ahead and hem these ruffle layers. And for the upper ruffle, or should I say the first ruffle, I'm going to place it right side facing like so, and I'm going to leave an opening. So I'm just measuring about 3.5 down. I'm going to stitch close that. Then you can finish it if you don't have a serger by folding in that raw edge later and you're going to stitch it. That is before you hem the down part of this ruffle. I've decided to serge mine with a nice pink color. This is how that upper ruffle looks after I've decided to stitch it and conceal the raw edge. So now to the bodice, you decide how you want it to overlap, assuming you are using a button like me. But if you are not, don't worry, you can just skip to installing the zipper later. Whether you are using a button or not, as long as you are not using a lining for your skirt, you are going to place your skirt piece on your lining. Make sure that the wrong side of the skirt is facing the right side of the lining. You are going to go ahead and pin this in place. Once again, the wrong side of the skirt is facing the right side of the lining. Pin it in place, and you're going to take to your sewing machine and stitch that using your allocated seaming allowance. After stitching it in place, this is how it looks. The inside should be looking quite neat at this point, while the raw edge is visible on top. Don't worry, I've got you covered. Now it's time to put the last layer of this ruffle. This is where you are going to place it right side facing and you are going to pin it, taking into account the way you want it to appear. On the part that is going under, on the part that you are not going to be making a buttonhole, mark where the placket stops, because that is exactly where you are going to place the other end. I don't know how to explain this part, but just watch. You want a situation that when it overlaps, the back will lie nicely. this is for people that are using button. But if you are using zipper, it's just pretty much straightforward to install a zipper afterwards. After stitching this layer, you are going to tuck that raw edge in and go ahead with your thread and needle and pick it. You are tacking the bodice and the skirt piece together. That way the raw edge is tucked away and concealed nicely. I just assume that you know how to finish a seam this way, so I'll just let you to it and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. So generally, if you had and stitch that with needle and thread, you will have a finishing that looks like this. And I've also gone ahead to stitch a button on, so you will have a finishing that looks like this. On the inside is quite neat, so it's just a matter of going in with thread and needle. And right here I have three buttons fixed, and my placket part looks quite neat. Maybe I should consider teaching finishing on YouTube. Just kidding. So thank you for watching to this point. Do well to make your buttons whole. I'm aware that there are lots of videos on how to make buttons whole, and by the side of this dress I decided to make a thread belt loop. The link to that will be in the description box. I haven't decided if I'm using a black velvet ribbon or I'm going to go out and look for a pink velvet ribbon. You go ahead and add a belt to your dress and the dress is ready. Thank you for watching to this point, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial coming soon. Thank you and bye for now.